with more. So Russia's talking in Abu Dhabi, and then you have Ukraine talking in Switzerland this week.
Yes, and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio's point to congressional Democrats here who think that the U.S. and White House officials are giving too much input to the Russian side is that ending a war started by Russia means that the Russians get a vote too.
The idea that the United States of America is not engaging with both sides equally in this war to bring it to an end is a complete and total fallacy. And I saw a lot of misinformation and rumors and allegations against people in this building, such as Secretary Rubio and Special Envoy Wynkoff and the president himself, that they are favoring one side over the other. That could not be further from the truth. I have watched as the president and his team have worked around the clock overnight with both sides.
Earlier today in Ukraine, Russia killed 6 people and wounded 13 with an attack that featured 460 drones and 22 missiles. At the moment, the Secretary of the Army, Jeff Driscoll, is leading the talks with the Russian side. His team is saying the Ukrainians have agreed to the peace deal ahead of Thursday's deadline. That is a big deal. Now they need to get Russia on board. The president is also trying to keep China's Xi on his best behavior, posting after an hour-long phone call with him. We discussed many topics, including Ukraine, Russia, fentanyl, soybeans, and other farm products. This call was a follow-up to our highly successful meeting in South Korea 3 weeks ago. Since then, there's been significant progress on both sides in keeping our agreements current and accurate. And President Trump says he and Xi will visit each other's countries in the new year.
Hey, welcome to my borrowed tree. You will with my borrowed tree. So much democracy when you employer me. You want to win your next election. I can help you win your erection. So much democracy.
Jerry, you just cook without him, bro. Jerry, you just cooked. There's no, it's beautiful. I'd watch if that was a feature-length film. I'd watch it. That should be the new theme song for Disney's remake of Mulan. This is a beautiful, beautiful meme. Thank you, Jerry, for this. Tuesday, November 25th, 2025. Needed a little laugh this morning because we have some breaking news for you, and I'm not sure if it's good or bad. But I can tell you that based on a series of very late night phone calls, and I did not feel like staying up late last night, but I had to hunt something down because I know so many people involved, I can just tell you that it's all true. That they can rig elections. It's real. And it's not like I ever doubted that. But to hear it from direct sources who I finally was able to just like pin down dates, times, names, numbers, and what happened, I can tell you some very powerful people were just sort of shocked last night on the phone with me and just up and admitted it. These are important people. These are people you trust. And they just said, yeah, yes, machines rig elections in America. We put a stop to it. We hunted it down. We figured out how it happens. And we are praying that it doesn't happen in the future, and we're trying to prevent it from happening in the future. And I said, well, this is the single, probably not the most sexy topic to talk about right now. Everyone would rather scream about Nick Fuentes or Israel or Ukraine, you know, and there's plenty of other big things that are going on. We're going to talk to Mike Davis today on the show about James Comey, the deep state, and the throwing out of the prosecutions against Comey and Letitia James. There's so many concurrent nightmares that are happening at all times, and it's designed that way. It's bewildering, but this is clearly the single most important topic in the country right now for the stability of our nation. If people don't have any faith in the pressure release valve that is provided to all of us, then we won't have a nation. And what do I mean by that? Every 4 years, in fact, every 2 years, even more common than that, there's local elections like every 6 months in your counties or cities. A year doesn't go by without you having direct say in the people who are leading you. That is how you run a functional country, and how you run a peaceful country like ours, where there are so many different competing interest groups, so many different nationalities that are here, that are like supposedly living in harmony and are our strength and enrich us. So much enrichment going on. The way that you stop the society from descending towards total incomplete chaos and non-functionality, and then into sectarian civil war, is you say you have a stake in this society and you can vote. And eventually, over the course of a long enough time horizon, the will of the majority will eventually be reflected in those who lead us. I think many people who voted in this last 2024 election are beginning to become embittered because that's in some parts, in some ways, not happening. And we can talk about that and analyze that. And it's sort of laying bare a reality that actually that system doesn't function or isn't functioning correctly. And last night, there was a story that broke that shocked me, and I had to hunt it down, and I did. And it's all true. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Because if we lose that ability to create the pressure release valve to have a say in this country, well, then what is this country really? It's exactly what they've always wanted it to be. It's a illusion, a facade of democracy where we're treated as tax cattle for an elite with bespoke and boutique agenda items, other little nations that they want to create or protect, entire populations that they wish to wipe off the face of the earth, genocides they wish to engage in, human experimentation, and slavery at a mass scale. And we're funding all of it under the illusion that we somehow have a say in this, and we don't. If what I heard last night plays out, then wow, we truly do have an existential problem on our hand that is every bit as big, arguably even worse than mass immigration from the third world, a bunch of people that nobody ever voted for coming here, small communities in our nation packed with Haitians. Like what exactly is that? You know, it's a practice in humiliation and subjugation, frankly, and replacement. That's terrible, but it's only happening because our elections are broken, and they are. And we've figured it out, and we're going to talk about it today because it's the most important thing that you can talk about right now. Again, the whole mood of the nation changed after an election in New York that inexplicably elected a Marxist, a Muslim Marxist from Uganda who was just naturalized an American citizen a few weeks ago. Like, that guy's now in charge of our most powerful city. What are we living in exactly? In Virginia, a guy who said he wants to murder Republican children, he won. He's the top law enforcement official. What's that about? In New Jersey, 500,000 Democrats just appeared out of nowhere. The Republican candidate actually did significantly better than he did in the last election, Jack Ciattarelli. He got 150,000 more votes from Republicans, even though a bunch of Republicans have left the state. That would have won the election, by the way, in 2021. Last time they had a gubernatorial election in New Jersey. He would have won with that tally, but instead 500,000 Democrats just appeared out of nowhere. No voter ID, mail-in ballots. Remember that, New Jersey. And so the entire mood of the country can change on a dime and can shift with the results of an election. Are the elections real? And what did we find out? That is all true. We're going to go there. Ukraine agrees to terms of a U.S. peace deal. That's huge. And then James Comey obviously getting let off scot-free. We're going to talk about that with Mike Davis and Mike Benz, who joined the program. Be like Mike on this show, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Benny Johnson, and this is The Benny Show. A reminder that our Christmas ornaments are live. An important reminder that we've placed our Christmas ornaments on the actual Trump tree. Here's the... I love the mood change here. Well, but why not? Why not? It is the holiday. It is a holiday week. It is the holiday season. We will not have a show on Thanksgiving or on the day after Thanksgiving. Black Friday, as they call it. Black Friday matters, as we say around here. We have our Christmas ornaments. We have trees stocked full of Christmas ornaments, and I promise you we will get to them by the end of the show. You've been sending me them like crazy. I've been traveling all weekend and all week, last week, at the end of the week. And so, my goodness, traveling with little children, 4 kids, 5 and under. That's no vacation. That is a sentence to no sleep and to trying to stop them from destroying every piece of priceless art inside of the Trump Tower. But we were there for a good reason. We were there for a charity for St. Jude's. We raised a lot of money for St. Jude's, serving little children with cancer, and we placed our Christmas ornament on the Trump tree while doing it. So please go ahead and grab yourself a Christmas ornament. Fine, if you would, please grab the video that Ryan sent this morning. I just want to show you all. That we are shipping them out by the thousands per day. I'm not sure exactly. I know just the truck. It looks like Santa's. It looks like Santa's bag. You know, it looks like Santa's bags. It makes me very happy. Again, we have a huge show to get to today, but look at this. We are literally creating a Santa. Those are your ornaments being shipped out. Thousands of them. These are your ornaments. Look at this. Can you go back to the very beginning? Look at that. There's your Santa sack of ornaments. I'm getting hundreds, if not thousands, of emails showing everyone their trees, and look at how many more we have going out. This is just from today. Again, these ornaments are $5. They're created by veterans. They're made by veterans inside of a veteran-owned manufacturing. Here in America, only Americans have ever touched these ornaments. They're fun, and they're bringing light and joy, and they're a good laugh. Perfect for around Thanksgiving. You can even get the bundle. You can get all 12, and you get like 2 free, 2 if you order list. But either way, we make virtually zero profit off of this. Obviously, the veterans get paid who make them. We just want Christmas joy for everyone. That's why these are $5. And yes, they are 100% made in America. So we're actually beating the dirty communist Chinese. You can't get little like dirty, filthy Chinese communist plastic widgets for this price. And that makes us very happy. We're proud of it. So we love you and a very, very Merry Christmas. I want to make sure that you and your family around Christmas time have the sort of the thing that you always ask for around Christmas, right? Which is peace on earth, goodwill towards men. I'm happy that there's peace on earth. I want everyone to live hearty and happy lives. I don't want there to be mass murder, genocide, or people getting hurt. I want you to not be hurt by your own federal government, who is meddling right now in your health care. Christian care is what I use. Medishare is what I use for my family. It has been wonderful. We've had 4 children using Medishare. Ladies and gentlemen, this is precisely the kind of health care that helps us with the cost saving and sharing that is and should be the basis of our healthcare system. Unfortunately, our federal government has broken our healthcare system beyond repair, forcing you to actually incentivize terrible and bad behavior. This is the opposite of that. You should sign up today. You should sign up today. Go to Medishare.com/Benny. That's Medishare.com/Benny. Send a text message and you'll get the info. It could really help you and your family. It has saved my family maybe tens of thousands of dollars just because it is a company that is based on Christian principles, millions of Americans use it. And they have high standards. Instead of incentivizing the worst behavior, they incentivize the best behavior. Meta share, ladies and gentlemen. A photo of my family, by the way, from this weekend. Here you go, just to prove it. There it is. This is the wife and kids and family all there at the St. We were there for a St. Jude's charity event that the Trump Tower throws every single year. So it makes us extremely happy to be part of that and to raise money again for little kids who have cancer. And that's what we were doing this weekend. And so, ladies and gentlemen, let's hop in today. I've already spoken at length about what I think when it comes to the election fraud system that is set up in our country and how important it is. You don't have a nation and you can't have a functional country if people don't believe in institutions. This is how it typically works. This is how it worked in Rome. Let me just give you a quick people's history of Rome. Not that anybody needs any lectures from me, right? Went to community college, very nice room temperature IQ. I'm not smarter than anyone, and I've probably read a lot less books than you have. So I'm not here to lecture anyone on world history. But the basic principles and architecture of the way that Rome fell goes like this. Rome became very, very rich. They stopped as a people engaging in hard things. Their rulers began to view their vast wealth and their vast conquest and their empire as functions of their greatness. They stopped worshiping God, even their Roman gods. They stopped worshiping God entirely. And they viewed themselves as gods. And then the Roman citizens viewed themselves as demigods, little princelings who didn't want to work, who didn't want to suffer. Life is suffering, by the way. All leadership is suffering. Leadership means you suffer and you do hard things. That is the trade-off. All of life, it is required that in order for you to build things, it must be hard. In order for you to have a functional relationship, it has to be hard. You have to be able to muscle through the tough times. Nothing is easy, in fact, in life. But when the Roman citizenry began to look at labor and strength and brute force and work as beneath them, they brought in masses from what would have been the third world at the time, foreigners, in order to do that slave labor for them. And more actually ended up outsourcing their entire their army, what made Rome so strong, to foreigners. While doing that, the corruption at the top, because of course God is God, we are not God. But if you think that you're God, you're going to be endemically corrupt. You're going to think you can do no wrong. The institutions began to suffer in Rome and began to collapse because people began to see them as run by frauds. And the society fractured. It broke. And then nobody trusted the Senate. Nobody trusted Caesar. Nobody trusted the courts. It was all seen as endemically and thoroughly shot through with total and complete corruption. And the greatest empire at that time in world history fell to pieces. Same thing happened with Egypt. Same thing happened with ancient Greece. Same thing have happened, of course, the most powerful colonial empires that were existent in recent human history. And the same thing is happening to America right now. And that's what makes this story so incredibly important, because at the very least, what we should be demanding in our nation is that what makes us a great nation, which is e pluribus unum, out of many one, that we all have a say, that we are all stakeholders in this society, that be maintained and preserved, meaning our votes matter. That's been diluted for the better part of a generation or two, frankly. You go back to some of the stupider and dumber laws passed in this country that obviously cripple the ability for us to have a say in society. Obviously, one that comes to mind is opening up our borders to a bunch of criminal aliens and then having zero ID to vote. So that means a criminal alien who doesn't belong here and has no history here and has no tradition here and actually probably hates this place and is using it for welfare, for their obese children, like that, like this vote cancels out my vote. Yeah, that's pretty much a destruction of that system. But there's another destruction of that system that was laid bare yesterday. And we have to speak about it because they're both, quite frankly, knocking out the pillars of what makes of this a functional society. And then what happens in a nation this big and this diverse, and in nations that are much smaller and less diverse that also succumb to this, is when you get rid of those pillars that hold up a society, when you get rid of that sense of identity that we all trust the vote, then the whole system, the whole house falls in on itself. This is a thread that shook me to my core last night by Emerald Robinson. It's time to explain exactly what happened on Election Day 2024 to stop the steal. It's not a particularly long thread, so let's just roll through it. This is a very long thread. It isn't, actually, and it involves a few people over 4 years, dozens of sources. Let's begin in 2020. Why? Because President Trump. Hey guys, this is the wrong thread. You need to go back to you need to go to the thread that was last night, please. It's the wrong thread. But luckily I have plenty of. The one linked in the yeah. ALX, this is the one from last night, please. Thanks, guys. That's all right. There's a important reality to looking at life as it is instead of life as you want it to be. And here, ladies and gentlemen, and this is where I need to see the full thread, guys. So yeah, see how it's not threading. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to read it on my timeline, and then you guys can catch up. Okay. There you go. Okay. Well, this won't do either. Just a bunch of screenshots. That's not going to do. As my team catches up here, and ALX has actually done pretty remarkable production on this. We just missed the thread. I want to just jump over, and just let me know, guys, when we actually got it. I want to just jump over to 2 or 3 important realities that we've talked about as a show for quite a while. That election fraud is real. This isn't something that is new to us. That election fraud is something that has happened, but has happened in sort of these isolated circumstances that we've been able to see and we've been able to zero in on and identify. Like, for instance, the criminal aliens that were voting in 2024, the Communist Chinese Party kids that were voting in 2024. Klein, you're going to have to go to just the timeline and just scroll upwards. I don't know why it appears like that. Yeah, I don't know if threads are broken on X, but this is just how I had to do it last night. And I'm not sure. ALX, maybe you could like diagnose this as to why exactly that is happening, but it is what it is. We roll with it. We're pros around here. Yeah, it's a bug, says ALX. That's okay. So apparently X has a bug. That is an everyday tweet. And that's okay. We're going to just rock and roll with it. Zoom in, please. Here we go. While we've been able to look at the incidences that seem extremely strange, right? Like, so since we took a second to get here, let's go ahead and look at like the Michigan ballot drop chart and the Wisconsin ballot drop chart. Like, these are really odd circumstances. Don't make any sense. It seems like just a bunch of votes were clearly added to the tallies of Joe Biden at exactly the time when you would add votes if you didn't want anyone to pay attention. Right? In the small hours of the night when everybody had gone to bed and no one was watching. Here's Michigan, here's Wisconsin, same thing, exact same chart, worse, I think you could argue. And you could see the clear trajectory. If these were two horses that were running a race, the Kentucky Derby, you'd obviously be able to see that one of them was going to lose and one of them was clearly going to win. And then something totally miraculous happened. I mean, if this were happening inside of a sports competition, you'd say either the game was rigged, the refs were paid off, somebody was using steroids, probably all of the above. Because what this shows is something that is totally and completely miraculous. Zoom, please. This shows something that that defies the human understanding of how competition works. And this doesn't just happen. And in a thread last night from Emerald Robinson, what we see is that this was actually by design. So let's hop in here, finally. A few weeks before the 2024 election, Senator Mullen, former Senator David Perdue, finally arranged a meeting between Trump advisor Susie Wiles and the one man who could explain exactly how America's election systems are rigged. The meeting took place at Mar-a-Lago. This is all new information to me. Susie Wiles had publicly said that the election fraud was not real and that people that thought so were crazy. That's a matter of fact. Susie Wiles comes from sort of institutional Republican thinking. And that's all right. Obviously, there was no guarantee that this was going to be a winning message. In fact, there was a guarantor that some people who had run on this message, like Kari Lake, had been completely flonged, in the words of Donald Trump, and were not able to win their elections based on mysterious circumstances. Of course, the Kari Lake race is a perfect example of what happens when you start questioning systems like this. These systems, of course, turn against you and are weaponized against you. Kari Lake, in my personal opinion, did, in fact, win that election. Okay, let's continue. Susie Wiles heard a briefing on election fraud, ate a piece of cake slowly, and then asked for the entire Trump team to be briefed. Let's go. In the end, the man who was doing the briefing on election fraud stayed at Mar-a-Lago for 3 days to brief absolutely everyone. There was only one man who Susie Wiles trusted to confirm all of this, and it was Elon Musk. A call was made, and the man found himself in a room with Elon Musk. Musk declined to sit through the whole briefing. He just said, "Give me your data." Let's continue. So Elon Musk read the AI summary of the technical data, and then he picked up his phone and made a call. "We have a problem. It's all true," says Elon Musk. Musk got on the plane to host Trump rally in Pennsylvania. It was on October 17th, 2024. Musk said something remarkable during this rally. We've actually gone and found it, to ALX's great credit, sort of the king of all Elon Musk commentary during this time frame. And we got that. We got this exact clip. Elon Musk said something very specific at this rally and remarkable in its specificity. Let's listen.
Well, there is, I think, some amount of cheating that takes place. It's hard because they've, when you have mail-in ballots and no sort of proof of citizenship, it becomes almost impossible to prove cheating is the issue. So a lot of people on the Dem side will say there's no cheating, and I'm like, you've made it impossible to actually prove that there's cheating. But statistically, there are some very strange things that happen that are statistically incredibly unlikely. So, there's always this sort of question of, like, say, the Dominion voting machines. It is weird that I think they're used in Philadelphia and in Maricopa County, but not in a lot of other places. Doesn't that seem like a heck of a coincidence? So I think we should, in my view, we should only do paper ballots hand counted. That's it. I mean, I'm a technologist. I know a lot about computers, and I'm like, the last thing I would do is trust a computer program. Because it's just too easy to hack. It's too easy to add just one line. And it's really difficult to hack paper ballots.
Well, that's strange. Elon Musk saying that at the time. Sure, a tone change. Nobody heard Elon Musk talk like that before. Let's continue. Elon Musk said at the rally, there's always been a question about Dominion voting machines. It's weird how you're used in Philadelphia and Maricopa County. Doesn't that seem like a heck of a coincidence? You just heard the full clip. Let's continue. However, could the 2024 election steal be stopped in a few weeks before the election? The man who briefed Elon Musk, Patrick Byrne, and Gary Bernstein said that their team had recruited dozens of people who knew exactly how the rigged system was built in Venezuela. And they had worked for these companies. Continue. This group of whistleblowers were hiding in a hotel in Switzerland before the 2024 election, and that's when General Flynn flew out to see them. Flynn asked, how long has election fraud been going on? And they said in Venezuela, they rig it in 72 different countries for the last 20 years. Continue. The whistleblowers from Venezuela had video meetings with Musk team and Trump team to explain the technical details of the election fraud, and the most important detail, that Dominion IP addresses had been located. All it cost was $15 in Bitcoin from an anonymous Japanese account. All right, well, it's just how internet security works, man. Bitcoin will open it all, won't it? The relevant data and IP addresses were now verified, and that's when Senator Mullen came to the rescue again. A cybersecurity team got the data. 3 days before the 2024 election, the Dominion offices in Serbia was hit. Cyber attacks, and their computers that they used to rig these systems were useless. On election day, nobody knew if the cybersecurity team had been successful in knocking out the Serbian computers. Everybody at Mar-a-Lago had to wait for the results. The man who briefed Musk flew to Oslo that day. They'd have to leave the USA if they failed. Imagine the moment on election day. Trump had no idea if he would win. Patrick Byrne watched from Qatar. Gary Bernstein watched from Switzerland. All of them would be hunted down if the 2024 election fraud was successful, and the USA would be finished. Just a reminder, at this exact time, Kamala Harris was going to all of the unions, some of them who had endorsed Trump, and told them that they are going to pay, braggadociously fronting that she, of course, was going to be the next president. There wasn't any question. At this exact same time, also, the pollsters who could be paid off, like Ann Seltzer in Iowa, were running polls that said that Kamala Harris is up in Iowa, a Trump plus 10 state that voted Trump plus 12, actually. Wasn't even like a question, but they were running suppression polls. And the game was on. The Kamala Harris campaign was running entirely and totally on vibes, media hype, fake polls, fake interviews, canned Kamala speeches where she couldn't deviate from even a word on the prompter. It was completely and totally manufactured in order to create a moment where you could say, like, historically, so many black women showed up for Kamala. It's a miracle. The game was on. The rig was on. The operation was happening. It was happening in real time. We could all see it before our very eyes, and we all had a sort of really bad feeling in our gut about it as we were watching it happen. You all remember this. Trump was upset at his own staff after Elon Musk verified that fraud was real. He'd been gaslit for 4 years by his team to drop the topic, and even hired a Cuban intelligence asset in 2020 to investigate the fraud and to lie to Trump that our elections were fair. But that's the thing about Trump. He's always hired the wrong people, and his own advisors tried to keep Trump from the meeting with the team that saved the 2024 election. And then he continued, and then here we go. Let's just call them the team that saved the 2024 election, the Three Musketeers. The man who briefed Musk and Gary Bernstein, Patrick Byrne, and I've now interviewed them many times along with Smartmatic whistleblowers from Venezuela, and I've confirmed my facts with ODNI. Hey, Alex, please get that clip of Tulsi. Maybe you have it in the script already. Tulsi voting machine evidence feedback. Thank you, ALX. Perfect. ODNI, Office of National Intelligence, Director of National Intelligence. What does she have to say about this? Clearly, this is something that would be crippling to our entire nation, were everyone to know about it. What does Tulsi have to say about potential mass rigging of elections. Let's listen.
I've got a long list of things that we're investigating. We have the best of the best going after this. Election integrity being one of them. We have evidence of how these electronic voting systems have been vulnerable to hackers for a very long time and vulnerable to exploitation to manipulate the results of the votes being cast, which further drives forward your mandate to bring about paper ballots across the country so that voters can have faith in the integrity of our elections.
Wait a second. So there's the director of national intelligence saying that our vote systems can be hacked. That we have vulnerabilities inside of our voting systems. This isn't something that, by the way, is extreme at all. And I'm going to get to my own original and independent reporting on this in just one moment. But just to let you know exactly how actually mainstream all of this is, watch the New York Times hack a voting machine and change the results. Here we go.
All cybersecurity experts who have given electronic voting machines any thought agree. These machines have got to go. To show you why, I'm running a mock election using the same dangerous and obsolete machine still in use today. Our election will find out whether Michigan students prefer their own university or our arch rival, Ohio State. Here we are. After the chaos of the 2000 election, we were promised a modern and dependable way to vote. I'm here to tell you that the electronic voting machines Americans got to solve the problem of voting integrity, they turned out to be an awful idea.
One vote for McCain.
That's because people like me can hack them all too easily. I'm a computer scientist who has hacked a lot of electronic voting machines. I even turned one machine into a video game console. Imagine what the Russians and North Koreans can do. I've even gone to Congress to raise the alarm. Our highly computerized election infrastructure is vulnerable to sabotage and even to cyber attacks that could change votes. This is the same electronic voting machine used in Georgia and parts of Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Mississippi, Tennessee, Texas, and even in swing states like Virginia, Florida, and Pennsylvania. Millions of Americans voted on paperless electronic voting machines in the 2016 election.
Who are you going to vote for?
100% Michigan.
100% Michigan.
Obviously Michigan.
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 But here's a little secret between you and me. I've already hacked these worthless machines. Step 1. Buy a voting machine on eBay. Or, if you're the North Koreans, hack the manufacturer and steal their software code. Step 2. Write a virus. Step 3. Email your virus to every election official responsible for programming the voting machines with new ballots. Many of these officials are easy to find online. Step 4. Sip coffee and wait. Step 5. Hijack the ballot programming and let the election officials copy your invisible malicious code onto the voting machines. Step 6. Watch your code silently steal votes.
The guy was able to say that the University of Michigan voted for Ohio State. If you're aware of college rivalries, you will understand how insane that is. It is like the Mets voting for the Yankees. Whatever sports rivalry you want to insert here, or human rivalry, it just doesn't happen. It's just an impossibility. And he was able to get the University of Michigan to favor Ohio State voluntarily in their election by just hacking their voting systems. And this is what I learned last night when I did a series of phone calls to some of the people involved in this daring and mind-boggling 2024 election fraud story. And I'm going to leave the names out right now because they don't want to be public about this. And they would like to perhaps use this as an opportunity to effort for more secure elections. There are some major bills that hopefully will be brought up in Congress in order to create safer systems. You're already starting to see a major push for banning mail-in ballots, for banning electronic voting, for going back to paper ballots. And so here are the three things that I was told last night by a number of individuals involved in this shocking case of election fraud revelation from 2024 and how the Trump team stopped it. First, that there are systems at place, not just machines, but actual systems that are loaded into the machines, the programming themselves, steal elections. And they're designed to do that. They do that through inputs, algorithmically, to create intended results based on fractions of votes and percentages of votes, the votes tallies that are so big or small in rural counties or big in urban counties. They are able to balloon out the Democrat counties and the total numbers by adding small amounts of votes in certain places, by just creating them out of nothing. And they're able to shrink smaller Trump counties in a way that leads to 51-49, like very razor thin margins in these states where you just lose by a whisker, right? That's something that was provable. Those are systems that they've caught them doing that in 2020. It's something that does happen in America. So how do you fix that? Well, it's based on programming, not the hardware, but actually the software that goes into these electronic machines, as you just saw there, demonstrated by the New York Times. Benny, you're crazy. You're insane. How could you possibly be allowed to do this show? By saying this, the New York Times is saying the exact same thing. These are the actual programs loaded into the machines, and these programs have access points for somebody to manipulate the vote totals. And that those are loaded onto an enormous number of machines in America, and that the reason these programs can operate efficiently on an election night is because they're connected to the internet. And that's obscene. Anytime something is transmitted electronically, it has vulnerability. If you're connected to the internet, then you can just straight up change or do anything you want to these machines. And that still happens. And so there was, I'm not going to get into total details here because I'm going to develop this entire story, but there was a aggressive operation, a counterstrike led by Elon Musk to save the 2024 election. And it's why Elon Musk actually knew that Donald Trump had won hours before anyone else. Trump sitting there at Mar-a-Lago with Dana White, and I've heard Dana White tell this story, that Elon Musk has said, "You won, you've won." That was before in some of the earliest polls rolling in, because Elon was able to see that the numbers were matching the reality on the ground. And the reality is this, that America potentially had its first fair election in my lifetime in 2024. Through a series of counterstrikes and through a series of great public intimidation against the bad actors who are operating these systems. Please see how Venezuela is being treated by our administration right now. Venezuela, we're in like a hot war right now with Venezuela. I mean, I think Donald Trump is actually going for regime change against the regime changer. Trump is treating Venezuela very badly. I'm not saying they don't deserve it, but you can start to delineate the consequences of this, and you can really start to see when you look at the force majeure on a national level towards voter security, how the systems get saved. So 2024 was a fair election. Elon Musk was able to predict, based on his own incredible strike team of geniuses, that President Trump was going to win, that his victory would be assured hours before anybody else knew it, including us and President Trump and Trump's team, because they were able to sufficiently suppress the theft that these electronic machines allow and are designed to create. And the final thing, how do you fix it? It's not that you can't have electronic voting machines. is that you can't have them connected to the internet and that you have to have election monitors. You need to have, clean bills of service. We do this for cars. We do this for planes. We do this for iPhones. You have to have inspectors, and you have to shut down any access to the internet. And you have to have an inspection of these machines that say that these machines have simply counted the ballots inside of them. And the ballots need to have a paper tracking system. We do this in Florida, where every ballot is marked and watermarked. The ballot does go into the machine so that it can count, and we can tabulate by 9 p.m. and give you your results, right? But if anybody ever contests the results, you can go find the stack of ballots and you can freaking count them and count them up against the machine. And that is what the Trump administration, I think, should have been pushing for, like from the very beginning. I feel like the more people understand about this operation and the system, the more people know that it is, in fact, real and what a threat it is every bit as big of a threat as criminal immigration, lawfare, and so on. The more we talk about it in real terms and understand the reality, the more that we can be treated like adults and we can solve adult things and adult problems. And this is a very big adult problem. We're living in a fantasy to think that these machines connected to the internet are on the up and up and aren't 100% being hacked by the communist Chinese or other nefarious state actors and are rigging our elections, are stealing your votes. Worse than any criminal alien could, frankly. A lot harder for them to go vote than it would be for somebody to just manufacture the votes out of thin air. That's what's happening. And so it's good to see this with clear eyes and to live in reality and not the world that we can delude ourselves into thinking exists, because it doesn't. The elections that your grandparents had didn't exist, and you can pretty much argue that Nixon Kennedy was a stolen election also, right? This has been going on for a long time. We have the capacity, technology, and the ability to put an end to it. Do we have the political will? We certainly are going to address it on this show, and we're going to be fearless about it. Final thing on this, in case you're thinking that I'm off the reservation or I'm gone insane, the people who agree with me on these points, the people who agree with me the harshest on these points are Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. I can prove it before we get to Mike Davis here. Here's Kamala Harris's prescription. Before Kamala Harris, of course, benefited from these theft systems. Here's Kamala Harris talking about exactly how vulnerable our elections are and what we need to do to fix it.
Systems to audit, but also what they can do around best practices and best machinery. We are talking with them about the fact that it is probably best that you do not have your election system connected to the internet, because that will create greater vulnerabilities. And then look at where we are now in this year of our Lord 2018. We're talking about paper ballots, but that actually might be one of the smartest systems. Going back to, a day when we could have something tangible that we can hold on to, because Russia cannot hack a piece of paper like they can a computer system connected to the internet.
It's exactly what I just said, man. And it's exactly what happened in 2020 and what was stopped in 2024. It's all real. It's completely real. Joe Biden, final clip. Joe Biden proving that it's real by just straight up telling us what they were about to do in 2020.
We have put together, and you guys did it for our administration, the President Obama's administration before this. We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
Extensive, inclusive, diverse, sophisticated voter fraud system in the history of politics. That's an exact quote from Joe Biden. I know they hate it when you take Joe Biden at his word, but that's a transcripted quote from Joe Biden right before, at the eve of the 2020 election. We've put together the best voter fraud system in human history, and we're proud of it. And we're going to deploy it. And they stopped it in 2024. And so that's how close we were. And it's worth constant vigilance. Mike Davis has constant vigilance. Mike Davis obviously is the founder of the Article 3 Project, an ardent defender of the president, and somebody who is actively sought for the prosecution of those people who were active in the suppression of the Trump vote, the kneecapping of the Trump administration, the destruction of the voice of the American people, James Comey and Letitia James chiefly among them, and they were let off the hook yesterday. Cases, judge completely dismissed the cases based on technicalities that I want to talk about with Mike, who joins us live now. Mike, welcome back to the program. Obviously, you know what we're going to talk about here. You've got to be pretty frustrated by this, and I am too. I guess my question is, what's happening here exactly? Is the judge correct in that Lindsay Halligan is not rightly appointed? The floor is yours.
No, not at all. You have an Obama judge who's the chief judge on the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the appellate court for the Eastern District of Virginia, where these charges were brought. Hand-selected a Clinton judge from South Carolina, and this Clinton judge came in, and the fix was in to dismiss both of these indictments against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Big Tish James. The evidence is overwhelming in both cases. Remember, before Lindsay Halligan became the interim U.S. attorney for 120 days, the prior interim U.S. attorney saw this evidence and was either too cowardly or too corrupt to do anything about this. And the evidence is overwhelming. He was told good riddance, and they brought in Lindsay. They finally had to find someone with balls because the male Republican attorneys don't have balls, particularly in Washington, D.C., so they have to bring women in who have balls like Lindsay Halligan, and she got a grand jury in the Eastern District of Virginia to indict both Comey and Big Tish James. Now, this is a suburb of Washington, D.C. that's loaded up with partisan Democrat operatives, and Lindsay Halligan still produced enough evidence to convince these grand juries to indict. In James Comey's case, the evidence is crystal clear that James Comey lied to Congress and obstructed a Senate investigation into Crossfire Hurricane, the biggest scandal in American history, where Obama, Biden, Hillary, Brennan, Clapper, Comey, and so many other bad actors politicized and weaponized intel agencies and law enforcement to take out their political enemies, Trump, and to help their political allies, Hillary. That is Republic ending. When you do that, that's what you do in third world Marxist hellholes. And Obama brought his third world Marxist tactics to the United States as the president of the United States. We also have overwhelming evidence that Big Tish James, who went after President Trump and tried to bankrupt him for the non-fraud of President Trump, paying back sophisticated Wall Street banks in full, on time, as agreed, with interest. Big Tish went after President Trump and said that Mar-a-Lago was only worth $18 million somehow. Mar-a-Lago, you've been there many times, Ben, is worth close to $1 billion or more. It is 20 acres of the most prime real estate on the planet. It is the only piece of property in Palm Beach that touches both the Atlantic Ocean and the intracoastal waterway. A tennis court at Mar-a-Lago is worth more than $18 million. Big Tish, as part of the Democrats' lawfare, including Crossfire Hurricane, with Comey, tried to take out Trump with a mortgage fraud case. But guess what? Big Tish had her own mortgage fraud problem because under New York statute, she's required to live in New York. She's the attorney general. She had this second home in Virginia, but it wasn't a second home, and it was an investment property that she allowed one of her nieces, her scumbag nieces, to rent from her and paid her as an investment property. Well, she lied to banks, she lied to mortgage companies, she lied to insurance companies about this because she wanted better rates. And guess what? When you lie to mortgage companies to get better rates, you create risk for the entire mortgage system. We saw this with the mortgage crisis back in 2008 when we had a lot of people lie about their income, lie about the use of their properties. They got better rates, and then our housing market imploded and caused a financial crisis. Well, Big Tish got caught lying about this mortgage down in Virginia. She said it was a second home when it was an investment property. And so she got indicted, right? This Democrat-dominated grand jury found the evidence overwhelming enough to indict her. And you have, again, this Obama judge teaming up with this Clinton judge and misreading federal law, creating a conflict between the branches, a constitutional conflict when you're supposed to avoid constitutional conflicts when you're interpreting statutes, and essentially said that the president and the attorney general can only pick their interim U.S. attorney for 120 days. And after that, it's these Democrat judges who get to control the U.S. attorney's office for the rest of President Trump's term. That is utterly insane. This will get reversed on appeal. But in the meantime, they have sabotaged, these Democrat judges have sabotaged these righteous prosecutions of James Comey and Tish James. And this is why I've said all along, these are the appetizer indictments, Ben. We need to get to the main course, and the main course is the conspiracy against rights down in Fort Pierce, Florida. That grand jury is going to get impaneled in January. And I'd say to these lawfare Democrats, you better lawyer up, because justice is definitely coming. I'm going to make damn sure that happens.
So yes, would you mind, just for a simpleton like me, explaining like you would to a very loyal Labrador, but somebody who just, is gonna need a little explanation? Why is it that they can rule that James Comey can argue and the judge can side with James Comey that Lindsay Halligan is only a private citizen and is not actually a representative of the DOJ or the Trump administration?
It is a misinterpretation of federal statutes that creates a conflict, and it violates the separation of powers. These judges think that they can read a statute that allows concurrently the attorney general and or the courts to appoint U.S. attorneys when there are vacancies, but you defer to the attorney general's pick when there are vacancies. You can't have the courts say we're gonna toss out the president and the attorney general's interim U.S. attorney and put in our own. There are elections in this country, and elections matter. We elect a president of the United States, and he gets to have a team who helps him carry out his executive functions under Article 2 of the Constitution. And you defer to the president's pick for his teams, right? Subject to Senate confirmation, but for these interim picks, you defer to the president. The courts would only step in when there's not a presidential or an AG pick. And what these Democrat judges are doing is they don't like the president and the attorney general's picks because they have a policy disagreement with the American people, and the American people elected the president to end this lawfare and bring accountability. And so these Democrats judges and these Democrats districts are trying to sabotage that because they want to put in a U.S. attorney, for example, in New Jersey, that will do the Democrats' bidding instead of Alina Habba, who will carry out the president's electoral mandate. They want a U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia who's controlled opposition by the Democrats instead of someone who is a bold and fearless warrior like Lindsay Halligan. This is a big problem. It's unconstitutional. The Supreme Court is going to have to step up and fix this because this is unacceptable that these corrupt Democrat politicians and other operatives can get away with their obvious crimes for which Democrat-controlled grand juries found there's probable cause to move forward.
So how does this look from a landscape perspective and moving forward? So the appeal goes directly to the Supreme Court now?
Now the appeal goes to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is controlled by Democrats, including this Chief Judge Diaz, who hand-selected the Clinton judge in South Carolina to get rid of these two indictments against these Democrat politicians. Look, the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court needs to come to this realization that these Democrat judges appointed by Obama, Biden, even Clinton are Democrat operatives in robes. They don't like the fact that the American people elected President Trump in this last election. And so they're doing everything they can to sabotage the president of the United States, sabotage the will of the American people. and the federal judiciary is going to lose its legitimacy and lose it very fast. And when the federal judiciary loses its legitimacy, it loses everything. It does not have an army to enforce its orders, and when it loses its legitimacy, that's when that's when the American people start demanding that Congress do something about it. Whether that is cutting the federal judiciary's funding, whether that means cutting judicial seats, just eliminating judicial seats, and so you get rid of these judges by elimination, by holding aggressive oversight hearings, by holding impeachment hearings. There has to be accountability for these rogue Democrats judges, these rogue politicians in rogue robes who are sabotaging the will of the American people. It is a red line. It's unacceptable. It cannot continue to happen.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think back when Colorado threw Donald Trump off the ballot that would be a wake-up call. Was that 9-0 at the Supreme Court? It's like there's been so many wake-up calls. Donald Trump getting the National Guard thrown out of Washington, D.C. Like, don't have the right to, I mean, we don't have a chief executive, frankly, if he can't be commander-in-chief and order the National Guard. We don't have a chief executive if he can't appoint prosecutors. And then, of course, you have what's happening in Texas right now, which is also just wild. The Republican judge that Ted Cruz appointed and nominated is now striking down the electoral maps in Texas. What's your read on that, Mike?
It's unbelievable that I don't know why Ted Cruz thought it would be a good idea to pick this judge, to recommend this judge. And again, we have this process, the blue slip process, which is this bogus process that's been going on for over 100 years, where these home state senators have veto power over nominations for U.S. attorney, U.S. district judge, U.S. marshal. So these senators have too much power as it relates to picking these spots, particularly when you're talking about like a U.S. attorney and a U.S. marshal, who are Article II officers who are working for the president of the United States and the Attorney General of the United States, and they can't do this. They can't do their jobs. You have Pam Bondi who has U.S. attorneys who are appointed by Democrat judges who she has to pull their teeth to get them to do anything. It's unacceptable that this is happening in our country. This is an intentional misreading of the statutes to give Democrats more power and to protect their own corrupt officials.
What's going to happen in Texas? That was a big one, where this judge, this Ted Cruz appointed judge, struck down the constitutional reapportionment that has, of course, under all rights of the governor and the House and the Senate there in Texas, was passed and ratified. This seems like the perfect representation of the people and the will of Texas. This went through without any problems, without any real major political consternation. A couple Democrats cried about it and flew to a much more gerrymandered state like Illinois to protest it. And it was all comical and farcical and silly and stupid. And then a Republican, Ted Cruz, Donald Trump appointed judge goes and strikes it down. Like, what's going to happen there, Mike?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And you have Fifth Circuit Judge Jerry Smith, who was on this 3-judge panel, who wrote this scathing dissent, how this Ted Cruz judge played the process, misrepresented what he was doing, misrepresented his position, didn't let Judge Smith get out his dissent when they put out the opinion. It's just unbelievable. I don't know what's going on with Ted Cruz lately. He's picking this judges like this terrible judge, and Ted Cruz is also pushing this AI amnesty for these big tech oligarchs so they can harm conservatives, communities, children, creators, so they can get amnesty, federal amnesty for AI oligarchs. I think Ted Cruz needs to come back to the conservative wing of the Republican Party instead of doing these AI oligarchs bidding, instead of picking these terrible judges who are going to hand 5 House seats to the Democrats, hand control of the House of Representatives to the Democrats so they can impeach President Trump and make the last 2 years of his administration living hell.
I know Alito has put a stay on that. What do you think is going to happen there?
I think the Supreme Court, Justice Alito has stayed this decision until the Supreme Court rules. I think the Supreme Court is going to side with Texas and say that they absolutely had the right to do what they did. But the bigger problem is how is Ted Cruz picking judges like this who would come to these just absolutely lawless, head-scratching rulings that it would have been so damaging to our conservative cause? Why is Ted Cruz pushing AI amnesty for these big tech oligarchs? Again, Ted Cruz needs to figure out who he wants to be when he grows up and become that person. Does he want to run as a moderate Republican, a pro-big tech Republican for president when he runs against JD, or does he want to run as a conservative Republican? It's not looking good for Ted Cruz right now.
Yeah, I think we all know what's going on there. Obviously, he wants Trump to lose the midterms and to get impeached, and he wants JD to be damaged so that he can run for president. It's like pretty plain and obvious. But it's terrible for the country, and you wish more people stood up against it. And I guess, Mike, that's why we're glad we have you standing up against it in the most important arena, which, as you've alluded to, the Southern District of Florida here is going to be a huge case, the grand conspiracy case. We've been hearing little drummings of this, little like you've been placing a breadcrumb trail for us for a while.
3 years, just 3 years, Ben.
For just 3 years.
Yeah.
And so you're going to get this question every single time you're on. What is the update there from Jason Redding-Quinones and his team in Florida?
Jason Redding-Quinones is a good friend of mine. I recommended him for the Trump U.S. attorney position in the Southern District of Florida in Miami. President Trump listened to my advice during the transition. I pushed very hard and got him confirmed. And I have Jason Redding-Quinones is the perfect guy for this job. He comes from a family of Cuban refugees. He comes from a working class, blue collar background like me. He is bold and fearless, and his family escaped politicized and weaponized intel agencies and law enforcement in Cuba. So I think it's in Jason's DNA that when Democrats politicize and weaponize intel agencies and law enforcement in America, that's a very bad thing, because where did the Cubans and other refugees go if America falls to these Marxists? And so Jason motioned the court to open a new grand jury in both Fort Lauderdale and Fort Pierce, Florida, according to the court's order that was granted. And those grand juries are going to be impaneled in January. And I have pushed very publicly since the Mar-a-Lago raid more than 3 years ago for a criminal investigation, a grand jury in Fort Pierce to investigate all of this Democrats' lawfare, this weaponization of intel agencies and law enforcement to go after Trump, his top aides like Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, who went to the clink, Jeff Clark, who's getting disbarred, his supporters on January 6th, who were persecuted under the Supreme Court's Fisher decision. This is unacceptable. These lawfare Democrats took our country to the brink. This is an ongoing criminal conspiracy for the last 8 years. Covering up the conspiracy continues. The conspiracy, there's no statutes of limitations problem. And I'm going to push very publicly over the next 3 years for these lawfare Democrats to be held accountable. And that means severe legal, political, and financial consequences. Again, I've been saying this almost every day since the Mar-a-Lago raid more than 3 years ago. The Democrats made me and you, Ben, a front and center election issue, saying that this is what they're going to promise to do. And the American people liked what they heard. And so 312 electoral votes, all 7 swing states, the popular vote, kept the House, won a comfortable margin in the Senate. President Trump and his team have an electoral mandate to make sure that these lawfare Democrats are held accountable, and that includes putting them in prison.
Well, I never regret doing this, Mike. So James Comey was out last night. We don't need to play the clip, but just you can pop it up as a play beside. Out last night, another creepy ISIS Joseph A. Banks hostage video where he's bragging. He's bragging that you were wrong and that he was right, and that this got thrown out. What's your message to James?
I would say to James Comey, I've thought all along you're going to have Democrat judges colluding to protect the lawfare Democrats, to protect the deep states. Those were the appetizer indictments in the Eastern District of Virginia. Those appetizers got sent back because someone said that the appetizers weren't good enough, but they're going to come back. You're going to get appetizers shoved down your throat, James Comey and Big Tish James, and then you're going to have the main
Probably
course
like
shoved
that.
down your. Yeah, exactly. You're going to have the main course shoved down your throats with indictments in the Southern District of Florida for this lawfare and weaponization. I'm going to make damn sure that happens.
There's one thing that you know from watching Mike Davis for nigh on 4 years on this program. One of our very first guests was Mike Davis in his thousands and thousands of media hits, is that this man doesn't lie. And when this man makes a threat, he's going to follow through on it. And he's made lots of threats on this program, and he was laughed at and mocked and ridiculed in the media, salacious headlines, and everyone thinking that Mike was just insane. And it sounds, and has been proven soundly, that Mike Davis was actually the only one who knew what he was talking about. So you should listen to him. He's actually the only one who could properly predict the future. He does so here at the Article 3 Project. Here's their webpage, Article 3 Project. And here's Mike's X account, obviously followed by 500,000 people. Follow Mike Davis. Godspeed, Mike.
Thank you, Ben.
Ladies and gentlemen, the reality is that I am a little bit under the weather right now, as I think many people are in the nation. It's okay. But we try our best to live clean at my house. It's important in times like this. Obviously, I'm a little bit stuffy and moving a little slower than usual. Make sure that in your home you are living, eating, and drinking clean. Cove Pure helps us do that in the Johnson household. This is a water purifier that works amazingly, is so easy to install, pops right in on your countertop, and ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you, makes it really, really easy for me to stay hydrated. We're getting up all hours of the night to get the baby. We have multiple babies that wake up in the middle of the night. It is utterly and thoroughly exhausting, but this helps us drink clean water and also helps me as I'm making sure I get a little extra hot tea this time around and stay hydrated. It is clean, pure, no aftertaste. Easy setup and no installation needed. It's sleek and nice. It looks beautiful inside of your kitchen. And ladies and gentlemen, it's a perfect gift for the holiday season. Cove Pure, COVEPURE.com/Benny. Get $250 off with the code Benny. Go to covepure.com/Benny to get $250 off. Hurry, the sale ends this holiday season. It is a perfect gift, ladies and gentlemen. Speaking of a perfect gift, our travels over the weekend obviously brought us constantly into and out of airports, into different states. We're in 3 different states this weekend, and it was, again, it's just exhausting to do this with little kids. It's harder to do it, obviously, in this profession without a cell phone that is connecting and that keeps us mobile and active on the road. Patriot Mobile is what keeps us on the road and keeps us going. Patriot Mobile is the only Christian conservative wireless provider. And again, it is just provable. We were in a skyscraper this weekend. We were in places that have hard to reach service. Ladies and gentlemen, Patriot Mobile is just one of those companies that you feel good using, you're proud of because they support you, your rights, and our most important right, which is free speech, to be able to say what we believe and not be killed for it, or at least we used to have that in our country. Fight back with Patriot Mobile. Go to patriotmobile.com/Benny, call 972-PATRIOT, and use the promo code Benny for a free month of service. patriotmobile.com/Benny. When I need to speak to a Patriot, I call Patriot Mike Benz, who's back by popular demand on a show that I didn't know that I was going to talk about election fraud or some of the more nefarious news that has sort of been haunting this nation. But there's nobody better than Mike, who is the executive director of the Foundation for Freedom Online, to speak on this topic. welcome Mike. Mike, welcome back to the show. I do I see some holiday decorations in your shot? I don't know, Mike.
It's holiday-ish.
The famous piano. Yeah, all right, okay. One of these days you should just serenade us. Like one of these days it should just be the Mike Benz. Maybe you could write a song that has to do with Nina Jankowicz and the State Department and the J6 pipe bomber and stolen elections, and you could present that for us. You could perform that for us. Just a thought.
Well, we're exactly 1 month from Christmas, so maybe I'll throw in an ugly, hit me up in 1 month's time. We'll do an ugly Trump Christmas sweater. I think I've got mine from last year. I have a small collection building of my MAGA-themed ugly sweater thing, so we'll do that.
Forgive us for the late start, Mike. I was just blown away last night by this Emerald Robinson thread detailing that machines do straight up steal elections, and that Trump knows this, and it was proven to his campaign that Elon Musk was able to stop it in sort of like a very desperate and last minute operation in order to project that we know that this process is happening, to stop it via other means. And I saw this thread, and I said, this is insane. There's no way that this is true. And then I called a bunch of people last night, well into the evening, in the small hours of the evening, and I hate myself for doing it because I just couldn't get enough of it, because I kept hearing from everyone, my God, how do you know this is true? This is all true. These are very powerful people. These are very connected people. These are people that obviously know, they were in the room when it happened. And they all said, yeah, this is pretty much, by and large, what occurred in 2024. We know that these machines were systematically stealing elections. We put a stop to it, and we'd like to do that permanently. And that just struck me as something that I think a story the administration should perhaps tell more full-throatedly and embrace, and tell the American people about this. But Mike, you are the master of hard truths for the American people and telling them about the world that actually exists instead of the world, the fake world that they want us to live in. So the floor is yours, Mike. Do machines steal elections in America? Has America ever stolen an election abroad? Please.
The whole reason CISA was created at DHS was because of Democrat momentum for the idea that election machines can be hacked potentially by the Russians and other malevolent forces, and that it maybe there was voting machine insecurity ahead of the November 2018 midterm elections. And that was why CISA was rushed into being set up in the first place. It was because our election infrastructure was at the cyber level was supposed to be insecure. This is how you had these kind of DNC election machine fraud documentaries like The Kill Chain produced about how easy it was to hack these machines. And this was something that was just so commonly known. It was a totally bipartisan talking point. It's something that has been talked about for decades at this point. I think it was in the mid-aughts when electronic voting machines started being this kind of project in Eastern Europe even. This is why you see these very weird State Department entanglements with companies like Smartmatic, where you had, I think, Hillary Clinton, her State Department during the Obama tenure was teamed up with Smartmatic to make sure they got shipped into these sensitive European elections, while Smartmatic's chairperson, I believe, was Mark Malloch Brown, the president of the Open Society Foundation. So, I mean, can you imagine if I don't know, the chief of staff of the Trump organization was in charge of Dominion, and then you had this kind of come from behind magic victory where Trump looks like he loses the election, but then suddenly, the next day, under these crazy circumstances, the Republican ends up winning, and the head of the company, essentially the head of the voting machine company, is like the head of the Heritage Foundation or something. I'm trying to think of, there's no real equivalent on the right to the Open Society Foundation. It's so globe spanning. But with George Soros being the number one donor to the Democrats and to the DNC writ large for his right-hand man, the head of his Wrecking Ball Foundation, to be the chairperson of the electronic voting machine company.
Jeez.
I mean, it seems like a recipe for disaster. And then you come back to things like what happened in Brazil. I mean, ahead of the very sensitive 2022 presidential election in Brazil, and Bolsonaro, the then president of Brazil, is just this week has now been thrown in prison by Lula. This is the stock and trade Biden technique. You just when you win a magic mystery election in finding the votes to just narrowly come from behind and win, then you quickly imprison your political opponent who you defeated under very mysterious circumstances so that you don't need to worry about them winning again. Well, that's what's happening in Brazil. But in Brazil, it was a very strange affair because Bolsonaro was campaigning against the electronic voting machines. He led a very big crusade. He saw what happened to Trump in 2020, and he was known as the Trump of the tropics and a very Trump-aligned government. And he said, we don't want these electronic voting machines here in 2022. So what was the Biden response to that? Well, they sent Bill Burns, the head of the CIA, down to threaten Bolsonaro, not to question the upcoming hypothetical future results of an election months away. A little strange to send the CIA director personally to deliver that message. They sent the head of the U.S. military, Lloyd Austin, then the Secretary of War, to threaten the Brazilian military not to side with Bolsonaro in the event that the voting machines declare that Lula wins. They sent Victoria Nuland down there to threaten Brazilian government officials. She was then the Undersecretary for Political Affairs for the State Department. And then in a very strange twist of fate, in the midst of a chip shortage here in the United States, where it was difficult to even produce smart cars because of our semiconductor chip shortage, the U.S. State Department diverted semiconductor chips from Taiwan to send them to the head of the Brazilian Supreme Court, the very Supreme Court that is censoring tens of millions of Bolsonaro supporters. Luis Barroso, back-channeled a secret agreement with a former U.S. ambassador to Brazil, mediated by the Biden State Department, to back-channel semiconductor chips secretly into Brazil against the wishes of Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro was not even informed this was happening, in order to secretly build the electronic voting machines that resulted in his, that were, shall we say, a not insignificant part of the story of Bolsonaro's very narrow loss that day. So why did the State Department run this secret operation? You can read all about it in the Financial Times. I believe it was, the article is called "The Discreet Plot to Fortify Brazil's Elections." And they describe the highly unusual secret whole of government mobilization between the National Security Council, the CIA, the State Department, the Department of War, and the White House itself to all get these electronic voting machines into Brazil secretly against the wishes of the Brazilian president. Why on earth would we deprive Americans of semiconductor chips to build electronic voting machines in a foreign country whose head of state doesn't want them? If there's not some statecraft purpose, while we know that USAID at the same time was funneling something like $80 million into funding the Brazilian Lula campaign against Bolsonaro and building up its censorship apparatus, influencing its judges through its rule of law programs. I mean, it's, $87 million. This all went into pro-Lula groups, pro-Lula unions, pro-Lula censorship organizations, pro-Lula media outlets. This is, again, where, Benny, I try to never go beyond my receipts. So while I've got hard, completely convictable in a court beyond a shadow of doubt receipts on how the censorship apparatus was constructed. I don't candidly know what the secret sauce of the electronic voting machines, but all I can say is it stinks to high holy hell.
They really do hate democracy, don't they, man? Like, they actually do hate us. And it seems like every time that there is any type of even whiff of a populist, nationalist will of the people coalescing around a candidate or a movement, they'll shut it down. I mean, this seems to be one of the major reasons why people think the Ukraine deal is going to be scuttled, is because it will force Volodymyr Zelensky to have an election. It's like step back from the table for just a second, like sober up, like drink a Gatorade, done with the hangover. Like, okay, let's actually look at this. We're sending billions to defend democracy in Ukraine. Everyone's dying. Everyone's dead. The entire country has lost an entire generation. There really isn't a Ukraine anymore at all. And the major holdup to peace is that they'll have to have an election. Mike, what the hell is that?
You know exactly what this is. They redefined democracy when they started losing elections. So instead of meaning the consensus of individuals in a vote, to meaning the consensus of institutions. From their perspective, it is a democratic process. It takes a lot to mobilize all of the different companies in the Chamber of Commerce, to mobilize all of the different financial firms and what they're invested in terms of fossil fuels versus climate finance. It takes a lot to mobilize all the different wings of the diplomacy and intelligence and defense and development sectors to come to some sort of democratic consensus about what to do with big global policies or big initiatives around war. And if at the end of that process, which takes months and sometimes years, in the event of things like the Iran deal or the Paris Climate Accords, or say ending the Russian reset and declaring effectively a new Cold War against Russia, if at the end of that very delicate negotiating process amongst the institutions, the voters come in at the end and, like a wrecking ball, decide to vote for someone who had a funny personality, I'll say, on social media, that is considered now to be an attack on democracy if the voters go against the so-called institutions, which all serendipitously, every single one to a T. This is how you get even defined as an institution. It means you are a member of the club, you're a member of the blob. And virtually all of our domestic institutions at an elite level are a part of this, all the way from our universities, like our highest ranking ones like Harvard and Stanford and Yale and the like, to even our teachers unions like the American Federation of Teachers and the National Education Association, which all have this multi-decades long relationship with the CIA and the State Department and USAID, to all the way down to our rule of law programs, the American Bar Association. You were just talking to Mike Davis, the American Bar Association, which mysteriously to me, I don't know how this is still the case, but the American Bar Association has the sole and exclusive monopoly right to credential law schools. It is the narrow valve through which the entire American legal system passes, and it's got an exclusive delegated semi-regulatory power from the Department of Education. Meanwhile, it gets tens of millions of dollars from the U.S. State Department and USAID to go into foreign countries to work with foreign judges and foreign prosecutors to rig their judicial system in the name of judicial independence, to keep their judges and prosecutors free from government influence. Our government apparatus goes in to control it, and then lo and behold, they come back to control our own, like Norm Eisen, who was the U.S. ambassador to the Czech Republic, running the State Department Czech Republic portfolio, set up these sprawling rule of law programs to control the Czech Republic's judges and prosecutors from 2011 to 2014-ish, and then comes back as soon as Trump wins and say, hey, what do we do to take out the opposition to the State Department in the Czech Republic when I was there? Well, we went straight to the judiciary. Hey, I got a great idea. We're going to do that here. And all of these institutions need to be reformed. The funding conduits for them have to be completely renegotiated. And we had a lot of progress in this in the first 4 or 5 months of the Trump admin, especially while Elon was there. And I have to say, while we're taking stock of the end of the year, I am concerned that some of the momentum on that much of the momentum, frankly, on that has slowed, not stopped entirely, but slowed dramatically in its pace. And there's been, I think, in the past 2-3 months, a kind of reversion at the pace level to the typical affairs of statecraft, negotiating the Ukraine deal, negotiating these various trade deals with foreign countries, all very important stuff. But my concern is that as Elon left the White House, and that became less and less of a recently left the White House thing, a lot of the energy and initiatives that was happening at the agency by agency level have slowed. And my concern is that Trump political appointees are now kind of focused on the day-to-day rather than the once-in-a-generation opportunity we have for mass disclosures, mass transparency, and a peek behind the veil of secrecy we've lived under.
Everybody feels that, whether it's Epstein or the pipe bomber or whether it's election fraud. Everybody feels that. It was laid bare with Thomas Crooks recently, where it's just demonstrable empirical lies that have been told about the single most consequential, presidential assassin in our lifetimes. And Thomas Crooks is there as a ghost. Nobody knows anything about him. The FBI is lying and mischaracterizing who he was and what his ideology was. And we would have had a very different election, meaning I think that Trump could have actually won more like, something like, 35 states if we had known full well that this was somebody who was transgender or using they, them pronouns, somebody who was a radical leftist, somebody who was radically seeped in left-wing ideology and hated the president. All of that was not only kept from us, the opposite was told to us. He was a right-wing extremist. He actually loved Trump. He was wearing an American flag shirt, and he once donated to a right-wing cause, and so he was a Republican, actually, and Trump deserved this. That's the story we were told by the FBI. And I, really wonder, why does it take an independent journalist, Tucker Carlson, to come out with this evidence that's clearly available, spoken in his name and his own YouTube comments? Like, what value would the Trump administration have from not disclosing everything we know about Thomas Crooks all the way down to his DNA?
I have a lot of thoughts on all of this. I can sort of, in my heart, forgive the slow pace of criminal investigations. I don't like how slow the pace has been in some of these, but I can sort of understand it. What I can't understand, I just put this in the studio chat. If you can pull up just this first link, it's the web archive link.
Grabbing it right now.
This is when you put it on screen, I'll explain where I'm going with this. This was CISA's Office of Misdis and Malinformation. If you scroll down, and you'll see this, what is MDM? Open that up, and what you'll see is you will see that they specifically say domestic threat actors for the DHS Office of Misdis and Malinformation. As you'll see right there in the archive at the top, it says CISA.gov/MDM, misinformation, disinformation, malinformation. Now, Benny, as we speak, this office was around for 2 whole years, from 2021 until 2023, when basically, I don't mean to brag, but my foundation published a series of reports about it, and then they shut down the website and renamed everything. This was around for 2 whole years. Now the Disinformation Governance Board was not formed until about April 2022. This was around since January 2021, the very first week that Biden took office, the CISA's Countering Foreign Influence Task Force, which was supposed to stop the Russians, which was repurposed to stop Trump in the 2020 election, quickly changed its name from the Countering Foreign Influence Task Force to the Office of Mis, Dis, and Malinformation, where it was no longer legally and in terms of its charter confined to foreign influence, because as they said 1 month before the 2020 election, they wanted to switch their focus to 80% domestic, 20% foreign. Now I bring this up because the second link that I put in the chat, you'll see it's the hawley.senate.gov link. This is from June 2022, and this is Hawley and Grassley. These were the documents that ended up blowing up the Disinformation Governance Board. If you click on that thing that says documents, what you'll see is a 31-page PDF, which to this day, over 3 years later, represents the sum total of internal documents we have relating to the Office of Mis, Dis, and Malinformation. What I want to know is why the hell do I have more information about the Office of Mis, Dis, and Malinformation and who they targeted as domestic threat actors from the minority Republican Senate? Remember, put yourself back in the summer of 2022. You had a Democrat president, a Democrat control of the House of Representatives, and a Democrat control of the Senate. And we had more transparency about DHS's Mis, Dis, and Malinformation Office than we've had in 10 months of actually having control over the executive branch, actually having control over the House of Representatives, actually having control over the Senate. Why is nobody at DHS publishing these? I want every internal file. I want every email correspondence. I want every text from a Office of Mis, Dis, and Malinformation government employee on a DHS phone to be in a WikiLeaks style, ODNI JFK file style DHS.gov database, where now and for centuries evermore, we have a detailed internal forensic reconstruction of the effery they did inside DHS during those years. So we can name and shame the appropriate people so that we can hold this up in the court of public opinion and say never again. Are they asleep? Did they not? Has the snooze button been on for 10 months? Do they not know it exists? It bothers me that we have more transparency from one whistleblower 3 years ago when we were out of power than we have from nominally tens of thousands of people at DHS under this executive branch while we have the executive branch power. And I say that not just about the Office of Mis, Dis, and Malinformation at DHS. I just published this video on George Soros' State Department cables that I found going into the WikiLeaks archive from 2010. WikiLeaks published State Department cables that dated from 1973 to 2010. Now, these are just from a handful of ambassadors and State Department folks whose records ended up getting leaked to WikiLeaks. And I was able to reconstruct dozens of transactions and global investments by the Soros Management Fund that were intermediated by the U.S. State Department. George Soros and his older brother, Paul Soros. I have more transparency about the Open Society Foundation's relationship with the State Department from Julian Assange 15 years ago than I do from my own State Department today. The Open Society Foundation weaponized that relationship with the global transatlantic foreign policy establishment to meddle in domestic politics while hiding behind a shield of secrecy with the U.S. State Department, with USAID, with the Central Intelligence Agency. And to this day, we have zero disclosures. Benny, why has not a single cooperative agreement from USAID been made public? Can I ask that? We know a lot about the contracts that have been cut, right? A lot of the funding to USAID. And what you get are one-line descriptions. Well, this was funding a transgender dance festival in Somalia. Okay, cool. First of all, these grant descriptions are never what they say. You get a one-line description in usaspending.gov, and then everything else is under national security or foreign policy. You just can't get access to it. And I give the famous Zunzaneo example where you had this USAID building a CIA social media platform in Cuba, but the usaspending.gov grant description was for humanitarian relief in Pakistan. It's spin the globe. It's totally random what the grant says versus what it actually does. But every single one of these dollars is accompanied by a cooperative agreement between USAID and the grant recipient with the actual details of what they're getting paid to do. And not a single cooperative agreement between USAID and the Open Society Foundation or the Omidyar Network or the Gates Foundation have ever been made public. None of the quarterly reports, none of the annual reports where they report on their milestones. Here's what you paid us to do. Here's how it's coming along. Here's our success. Here are the people that we're talking to in network. None of it. I need to go back to hacked records from 15 years ago to do that exercise, when nominally you've got the president's pick of personnel at state and at USAID and at the White House, and you've got a Republican majority in the House and the Senate who wouldn't block these disclosures, or could be, I don't think it would be politically palatable, frankly, and so I thought in the first couple months of the admin that because so many things were happening at a breakneck speed, that this was coming, and that and then for the next couple months, I thought, this takes time. And now, as the end of the year approaches, and then when 2026 starts, the focus is going to be on the midterms. I am coming to you concerned, and to all members of the administration, whether you are at DHS, whether you are at USAID, whether you're at the State Department, whether you're at the CIA or ODNI or the Department of War, I implore you, please, on behalf of the American people, on behalf of the mantle of history you inherit for this very special moment in time, where every day is a precious day where the clock is ticking down.
Yes.
Open these files and let us in.
Yes. The only way that you reestablish trust, whether it's with your girlfriend or your wife, whether it's with your dog, whether it's with your children, or whether it's with the electorate in a country that you run, is you have to be totally open and transparent with them, and you need to apologize. And you don't have to be perfect. This happens between me and my wife all the time. You just have to acknowledge that you're going to move forward, and you're going to acknowledge that some things went wrong, and you're going to be totally open about it, right? You're not going to be secretive. You're not going to be withholding or tight-fisted, ham-fisted, and bitter and cold. And that has not happened, Mike. And you got to criticize, sometimes the closest people to you are the ones who are going to have to bear the criticism of your actions and try and correct course. And that's what we're trying to do here with the Trump administration. Obviously, this Epstein thing has backfired in a spectacular way that was predictable by people like me and you, but has totally shocked the administration. I don't know why, but I pray that misread and the political damage that it has caused prescribes for them a better way forward, which is complete and total radical transparency with a American populace that elected you for that. And I want to here's my friend moment here. It's not their fault in the sense that this trust was destroyed by incompetent, stupid, malevolent leadership of our nation in the past, while Donald Trump was a TV star. But they did inherit these broken systems at the FBI and the CIA and the State Department and USAID. And so since they inherited them, and since now they have the keys, it is incumbent upon them to release everything that they have on the pipe bomber and everything that they have on Thomas Crooks. And every time that Democrats or Thomas Massey or MTG or whatever, the ladies of The View, are out there looking like they're asking for more transparency than the administration, that does damage. Like, we should beat them at that game. And it is them who, frankly, are the ones committing the crimes with Jeffrey Epstein. I haven't seen anything implicating Donald Trump at all. We'd be honest about that if there was. But there's nothing. It's only Democrats, actually, who are begging him for money, who are doing his bidding in Congress, and who are his clients. So, Mike, again, I asked the question, and it might have to be the parting question, but I asked the question for your friend, for your advice that you would give to, like, your drunk friend who's making mistakes at the bar, you know, who's like acting, you know, who's acting up or not behaving in their right mind. Like, what is your message to the Trump administration as it pertains to this level of transparency, whether it's CISA, the Misinformation Disinformation Board, or whether it's the J6 pipe bomber? What's your advice?
I'll start by dealing with the Epstein thing first.
Please.
I've spent so many thousands of hours of my life on the Epstein kaleidoscope, and it's a fascinating, just cinematic universe. And to me, it's kind of it's a very interesting anecdote, a microcosm that once you understand that network, it helps you understand other networks. In the grand scope of global blobbery, Epstein himself is a relatively bit character, but and so I assess it to be a kind of medium scale importance. But the reason it has resulted in now apparently Marjorie Taylor Greene leaving Congress and the MAGA base being fractured is because we are so fixated on the missing Epstein files because we don't have other files to sink our teeth into. Benny, imagine if today, what we just talked about, this is so simple. The files are all there at DHS for the Office of Misdis and Malinformation. Imagine if a public database was made available of every single internal communication, every single deliberative document, every single individual in the United States who was listed as a domestic threat actor, what they went after everyone for. We got the Twitter file side of it. We got a couple of disclosures through court documents. But imagine if for 3 weeks we could pour through the dis, and malinformation files of the U.S. federal government. That would, you'd still have, folks invested in the Epstein story talking about it, but we would have, it would be a show of open hands to the American people.
Yes.
That would allow us to focus on things that are important.
Yes.
And the failure to have the USAID files, the failure to have the State Department files, the failure to have the White House Information Integrity Working Group was a 26 government agency-wide coordinated censorship apparatus. I published this at my foundation. It is a frigging bombshell. The White House itself, co-led by the ODNI and the National Science Foundation, which is just the civilian arm of DARPA, led a 4-year global censorship coordinating ring, and we don't have a single file from that. And so in the absence of any other files that are relevant to our life to sink our teeth into, people are left to talk about, well, God, can't you at least get us the Epstein stuff? And, inversely, the Epstein stuff may be kind of harder politically to turn over. There's the criminal and, sort of side of it. There's, I'm hearing now that Cash is saying that the estate actually has a lot of the files and it's difficult legally to get access to. But there's no excuse for this other low-hanging fruit, which gives us months, years to dig into. This stuff takes a lot of time to dig, and you don't need to read it all. I don't think that Tulsi Gabbard necessarily read 89,000 JFK files personally before declassifying them and putting them on an ODNI.gov website. But you know what, Betty? The moment she did that, she probably bought about 6 months of unfettered goodwill from the American public.
Yes.
And nobody's followed that example. And I don't know that there's the same. I want to see evidence that the fire is burning hot there. And I know it's a tough job. And in many ways, it's a thankless job until you do something really big that makes everyone say, God, thank you. I mean, people are going to be thanking Tulsi for those JFK files, which were bombshell. I mean, Benny, we went over this. One of those files had the CIA plotting with the National Security Council to drop man-made biological agents appearing to be of biological origin on Cuban agricultural crop workers. That doesn't necessarily help our diplomatic posture with Cuba. That was classified for 65 friggin' years.
I've seen this. It's a rerun. I've seen it. They say Back to the Future. What's a rerun? Like, oh my God, the CIA created a biological agent in order to collapse an administration of a state. That's Mike. It's like it's almost. It feels so. It feels so close. It feels so cozy. It's almost like we just lived through that.
Right. Well, I mean, that was literally the same. They referenced in that CIA document the Rocky Mountain Laboratory, which is the exact laboratory that got funding under Tony Fauci for gain of function for the DARPA Fern Cleveland site insertion in COVID-19.
Come on, bro.
Come on,
bro.
I mean, we could talk about that forever. But the point that I'm getting at is that is something that in my heart, when I saw that, I had zero surprise because I read Chris Newby's Bitten. And all the circumstantial evidence for that is there's so much smoke. You'd be insane not to run in the building if you had a child inside because there's probably there has to be a fire with all that smoke. But then you see the smoking gun CIA document, and now the case is closed. Now, when I go home to Thanksgiving, I don't need to say, "Oh, look at this and this and this and this and this." I can just go to odni.gov and I can hold up this document, and that's the end. And the same thing can be done at every level of this administration. And it's like, it seemed like there was a real fire while Elon was there.
Yes.
And, now we're hearing reports about Doge being restructured. I know it's being contested and yada, yada. But the fact is the priority for Doge-style declassification and serious reform does seem to have seriously slowed. And that has got to be reversed. I mean, there's got to be a big show. We need our Hoover Dam project. We need a Great Works project announced by this administration, in the next month or so before the start of the new year, to really energize people about what they can expect. So we don't need to keep spending months in the dark about what's coming, fearing nothing will, because my concern is that's what leads to infighting. When you don't have forward progress on a bright, beautiful future, you fall to fighting amongst your brothers for the limited present that you have.
I hope that it is seen as a massive warning sign in the road that we elected Donald Trump on a protest vote in order to smash this corrupt system that clearly hates the people that it purports to represent and lead. And they have to do some system smashing. I know it's painful when you're in charge of the system itself, right? The FBI looks a lot different when you're the one getting the guns and the badges. But that's why Trump was elected, not to become that system. And so it is absolutely imperative that you restore that trust. And we who elect Trump on that protest vote, like those same people will elect a Mondami to do the same thing, right? The guy can't run for president, but they'll elect a Mondami proxy, like an AOC, for the same purpose. They can run on the same message, and it'll be a lie. But those voters can shift. You can see it. They'll go to Bernie Sanders for the exact same purpose. And I think Republicans need to hear that message, and hear it now, right now. That this is why Trump was elected, and they better become the smashing machine, and do it quickly, because otherwise they'll lose it. Yeah.
Well, I still have you since you focused a little bit more on the FBI than I have in this. I'd be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity. I sent you in the chat just as my sort of final sign-off farewell. Here's one thing the FBI could do immediately. Yeah, could you just read these 7 steps to transparency for the FBI pipe bomb investigation? All of this is easy to do, but easy to not do if nobody's pushing you. And I hope to use your platform to, if the FBI is listening, here's how you can show. Okay, you can't find the guy. Show us what you're looking at,
or girl,
so that So step one, upload all 39,000 raw video files. The FBI told CBS or ABC, it said in January 2022, it said it had 39,000 raw video files of the pipe bomber from different angles. So we can run a huge sweeping range of composite analyses. Number two, upload redacted versions of all 400 plus interviews the FBI told the media it had conducted so we can get a comprehensive view of all the evidence collected. Step three, upload redacted versions of every FBI and DOJ internal deliberative memo and internal forensic assessment analyzing the evidence compiled so we can see both the leading and alternative theories of the case as the FBI presently sees it. Help us get you past the blocking points. Step four, upload redacted versions of every internal and DOJ email and text message related to the case from January 2021 to present so we can see how the case theory evolved over time and how it may have been sabotaged from within. I know that Kyle Seraphin has mentioned that there were these early leads and there was a license plate and a metro station. Let's see it. Step five, internally run a detailed personnel search on the main FBI agents and DOJ officials who were in charge of the pipe bomb investigation during the Biden admin and read every communication trace they left and tell us what you found. Who was it who was in charge of who was the FBI guy in charge of the pipe bomb investigation? Who was the DOJ guy? What were their internal communications? Step six, trace the physical chain of custody for the cameras overlooking the DNC site to see at what link in the chain of custody the footage appears to have been tampered with or degraded. I don't believe that the DNC headquarters, which was broken into in the 1970s, culminating in Watergate, had a 1 frame per second video surveillance camera 30 times worse than your average 7-Eleven. I don't believe that. I think it went into video processing and the footage was degraded and they blurred the eyes and they dropped the frame rate to 1 FPS. And I want to know who did that. Was it the FBI? Was it a third-party contractor? Number seven, cell carriers informed Congress last year that they possess intact phone usage data from the area where the 2 pipe bombs were planted at the Capitol on January 6th, contradicting the Biden FBI claims that the corrupted data prevented identification of the suspect, who was both making phone calls and text messages on his cell phone while he was planting the devices.
Yes.
Request that phone data. They told Congress under the Biden admin that actually it wasn't corrupted when they sent it to the FBI. So get the uncorrupted phone data and give us a detailed update on all the investigative links you are pursuing about that phone data so that we know where you're stuck and how we can focus on. You do those 7 steps and you just bought 2-3 months of us to, instead of blaming the FBI for holding this up and keeping us in the dark, we are now level set with the FBI. We are an extension of the FBI, the same way Bellingcat and Capitol Hunters and all those crap groups were for the January 6th investigation. The SPLC was just attached to the FBI as a long arm extension. Let us be your long arm extension to help with this. And that gives us something to do with real evidence and real facts to add to our public body of record while you're continuing to run the traps internally. This is one of these things where you do that, you'll buy several months of extremely goodwill. And instead of blanketing this, we're over 4 years past it. You can't hide behind ongoing criminal investigation anymore. At this point, it doesn't matter if the pipe bomber sees what evidence we have against him. This has been 4 years. Help us help you.
The phone data has always blown my mind. Like why we don't have Thomas Crooks's phone data. Obviously, there's photos of Thomas Crooks minutes before he shot President Trump in the head on his phone. We have no idea who he's on the phone with. We have no idea who he was calling. We have no idea what he was searching. We don't know what he was doing here. Was he on a phone call? I'm sure as hell looks like it. Who was calling him right before shooting Trump in the head? We don't know. The feds know, and they refused to, even though we have this photo that was taken from a sniper who was watching him inexplicably and then locked out of his sniper nest, as the story goes. But we have this photo, so it's like an insult to us that they don't give us this information. And he's dead. The pipe bomber is presumably alive. Who knows? But the pipe bomber is also inexplicably on their phone for minutes, at half an hour, wandering around, clear as day. The companies say that they have this information. What the hell is the holdup? Because we can see, it becomes so much more insulting. You know, the Zapruder film was released like a decade after they shot and killed JFK. So it's a lot easier to kind of like bulldoze all of this. But because we can see that they're on their phones and we all know how a phone works and the companies say that they know who these people are, what numbers were being used or who is being called, it's prima facie the greatest insult to a critical thinking people, which we are. No, I mean, that's dying quickly, but we still maintain the ability to say, you're lying. And the videos prove it. And the more that they continue, the more they carry this on, the more insulting it gets. Yeah, you're exactly right. And this is the pressure release that we want. I mean, I'm sorry that we don't have more time to talk about. I'll give you the last word. But to your point about JFK, in conclusion, last thing I'll say on this, you're so right, Mike. The moment they release those JFK files, and they're not even all of them, but the moment they release those files, pretty embarrassing stuff in there, stuff that clearly that the CIA wouldn't want out. The CIA bumped into Lee Harvey Oswald. They were actually, running him and operating him. I mean, they've been lying about that for 70 years. But anyway, they released that, and you could feel the pressure dissipate in society. You could feel it. I know you can. Like, you could feel it go away. And that was such a great practice, actually, in what they should be doing on all of these concurrent issues. Why they don't take that tact, I don't know. The final word is yours, Mike.
Nobody in the world wants, especially if you're successful on the outside, Cash or Dan's job at the FBI. They gave up huge salaries to be pilloried by the public and inherit something that is fundamentally unfixable. You can make changes at the margins, but at the end of the day, we have 4 political appointees at the FBI, and there's 38,000 FBI employees. So it's 4 against 38,000. Nobody, and they're setting themselves potentially for getting indicted or lawfared for the rest of their waking lives with any reform that they do. I do not envy their positions, and I think that the public needs to have perspective about the demands at the FBI level because of what they're up against on the inside. At the same time, if you're stumped, there's a what is it, a $500,000 reward for the pipe bomber's identity? If you're stumped about the pipe bomber's identity, which you clearly are, and you're tantalizing us, a lifetime worth of riches for finding this person, then let us see through your eyes. Show us what you're looking at. You know what I mean? Like, help us help you. Help us help the investigation. And they had no problem doing this with the January 6th cases. They had no problem putting out everything they had. They had an ongoing investigation about every single person on the FBI wanted list. They had no problem creating whole dossiers and making all of that public to help Capitol Hunters and Bellingcat and the Atlantic Council DFR Lab and all these, the entire whole of society, civil society network to go after and help identify anonymous criminal suspects. Yeah. Just do that here. It doesn't, we're not demanding that you have the answer because we understand what you inherited. I'm sure the FBI and DOJ burned thousands of internal files about the J6 pipe bomber. I am sure that the record they have is corrupted. But show us that record so we can help you. You may only have a handful of investigators inside the FBI that you can actually trust. You got hundreds of thousands of us, though. So let us see through your eyes, and that will help us empathize with the situation you're in. But we need to see it. Let us in.
Mike Davis giving great relationship advice there, too, as well, right? Like Mike Davis, it's like make sure that people can understand your perspective and where you're coming from and do the diligence to explain that. And that's how you have a functional relationship. And then be honest with them and then be admissible about what's, the problems that have occurred in the past. And you'll have a good relationship. People are forgiving. And people want these systems and relationships and institutions to work, actually. And so I hope that they follow your advice.
These are great people with a very difficult job. And we should also try to be as loving as we can.
I do. I pray for them.
Providing
I do pray for them. I pray for you, Mike. I pray for you, Mike. I pray for everybody who speaks very, very difficult truths instead of sweet lies. And Mike is just one of those people. Please follow him. He's already got millions of subscribers. You should certainly be one of them. For the most honest man on the internet, and that's saying a lot, the great Mike Benz. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Benny.
I hope that the FBI does listen to Mike Benz there and his incredible strategy for restoring trust. We need it, quite frankly. We need it. We've lost a lot of trust in this country. We've lost a lot of trust in our nation. We want to restore it as best as possible. The American dollar might be one of those things that, is beyond restoring trust. It's lost about 100% of its value over the last 100 years. Not good. That's why I invest in gold. Advantage Gold is my gold company that I use to buy gold and silver. Precious metals are just one of those things that maintain their values. Some things go up and down, and some things skyrocket and then collapse down to earth. If you want steady and you want true gold, not digital gold, like true, actual, precious metals, supply and demand, baby. That's why gold is rocking, and it's been rocking in my portfolio. I encourage you to jump in. Advantage Gold is offering a $10,000 free silver with a qualifying purchase. It's real silver you can hold in your hands. Text Benny to 85545 right now for your free 2025 gold and silver report. Text Benny to 85545 for your once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and check in on some good news from Polymarket. Go ahead and check the markets. Go. So our friend MTG decided to quit Congress. That means she's going to run in 2028. Well, she's ticked up to 4%, nearly as close as Donald Trump. 5%. I love that Donald Trump is still number 3 as to who will be the Republican presidential nominee. J.D. Vance carrying this one strongly with 55%. I think that's an accurate market right there. Marco Rubio, most likely running mate for J.D. Vance, I would argue, is holding it down at 8%. I have so much to say on Marjorie Taylor Greene, and not enough time to say it. I'll just end with this: that she's been a guest on the show a lot. It's hard to see this atrophy like this, and you're part of the op. That's the thing that frustrates me about all of it. That this entire thing, this Epstein thing, was an atomization op in order to destroy the movement and to actually break off some of the strongest defenders of the America First movement. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was on the steps of the courthouse for President Trump through 2024 and was on our show defending Donald Trump, and such a strong defender of the president, was a real fighter. The op was designed. You're giving in to the op. We're fighting good and evil. Stop giving into the op. Take a breath. Make peace. Blessed are the peacemakers. The entire Beatitudes, live out those Christian values and make peace and understand the greater fight that we have against evil. Don't give in to the op. This was the point of the Epstein op. It's very, very frustrating, ladies and gentlemen. It's very frustrating. Keeps me up at night. Before I went to bed last night, I was stressed out. I'd learned so much about election fraud. My wife literally took my bond charge mask and threw it on my face. That's a matter of fact. She took it and she tossed it on my face before I went to bed. She said, "You need this." I also have some sinus problems going on right now. And it's just that time of year. She's like, "Just do this." And I actually do feel a lot better this morning. And the point is that I do use this every single night. My wife knows when I'm stressed out, and when I'm frustrated, these things. And so that's what happened. It was nice. As ever, relaxing. Yeah, I felt euphoric afterwards, went right to bed, knocked right out. Red light is great for you. You don't get enough of it. I live here in this dark little studio with searing lights in my face all day. And so, man, sometimes you just don't get what God intended for you in nature. That is why the Bond Charge red light mask works great for me. Go to bondcharge.com/Benny. Use the coupon code Benny to save 15%. That's BONCHARGE.com/Benny. Use coupon code Benny to save 15%. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to save the rest of our thoughts for the next show. We will be back tomorrow. We're going to go to Megyn Kelly's show now for 2 hours, which is going to be awesome. So I encourage you to tune into that. And I will give you the encouragement as we step away with our verse of the day. From Proverbs 28. Evil men do not understand justice, but those who seek the Lord understand it completely. Humble yourselves, bow your head, seek the Lord, speak truth, live out that great American dream. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be doing it with you I'll be fighting with you. I'll be there alongside you. And ladies and gentlemen, the best part about us Christians is, well, in the end, we win. It's your boy Benny. See ya.
Welcome to my borrowed tree. You will with my borrowed tree. So much democracy when you employer me. You want to win your next election. I can help you win your erection. So much democracy. Put your ballot in. I take your ballot out. I change them to your name. That's what democracy all about. TV screen, stand up strong, battle through the night. The Benny Show's here, bringing liberty to life. From the speeches to debates, Benny sharp like a blade, cutting through the lies, watch the truth cascade. With the warrior's heart, this man never fades. You know it's prime time when Benny invades. From saving the nation to stories untold, the Benny Show's a storm, see the truth unfold. Stay in the loop, let freedom take hold. Salting all the libs, soul never sold. It's the Benny Show, where the truth gon' be. Faith and freedom on your TV screen. Stand up strong, battle through the night. The Benny Show's here, bringing liberty to light. Liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Liberty to light. Bringing liberty to life. From the speeches to debates, Benny sharp like a blade, cutting through the lies, watch the truth cascade. With the warrior's heart, this man never fades. You know it's prime time when Benny invades. From saving the nation to stories untold, the Benny Show's a storm, see the truth unfold. Stay in the loop, let freedom take hold. Salting all the libs, soul never sold. It's the Benny Show, where the truth gon' be. Faith and freedom on your TV screen. Stand up strong, battle through the night. The Benny Show's here, bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light.